John McNary was born and raised in Albany, New York. He served in the Navy for 5.5 years. He attended Siena College with a BA in economics and completed an MS in economics at the University of New York in Albany. He is married, and his wife, two sons, and they've only been married 51 years. They have 3 children. I'm sorry?
So have I.
Good for you. They have 3 children and 3 grandchildren and 1 border collie. His employment has been with Bethlehem Steel in Albany and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for 19 years, Federal Express as a business systems analyst for 23 years, and he retired in 2009. His activities include extensive gardening. He is a master gardener. He works with Habitat for Humanity of Memphis. He's an instructor in economics and statistics, and he's on the Shelby County Historical Commission. He, like me, became interested in visiting cemeteries after a visit to an 1850 garden cemetery at Albany and having the opening scene in the book Ironweed, which I've never heard of. I'll have to get that one.
That's by William Kennedy.
Is it?
A local author up there, and he opened the whole book in the corner plot of Albany Royal Cemetery with the hero of this book sitting on top of a tombstone.
And I would like for you now to give him a warm welcome. John,
Thank you, thank you. I didn't realize I said all that. That you read. This is not a classroom. I have a tendency to get into a classroom academic mode, so stop me. Just stick your hand up and interrupt me whenever you can. We've been married 51 years, but go back even 10 years before that. I would make it about 61 years ago when I was just about that high. Literally, he came from an area of the country. Albany, New York had one of the first true garden cemeteries, Albany Rural, in 1844. All right. And as such, my father's family, and then my mother was Polish, and they had some very serious rights when they wanted somebody passed away in the family. And they were buried up in an adjacent cemetery up there known as St. Agnes. So the Catholics had one side, the rest of the Irish Protestants and everybody else had the other side. And that was the era, the atmosphere in which we got into cemeteries up there. I didn't think anything of it. We have a national president, Chester Arthur was buried up there. He's got a big mausoleum and all that, and that's the biggest landmark in the town. But the cemetery itself, Albany Rural, was absolutely beautiful. And what caught my eye was what they did with the Civil War soldiers coming back. My father was very much into it and explained a lot of that cemetery and the monuments to me. We grew up, moved away, went to the Navy, did this, that. We had started having children. People passed away in the family, and we went back up to the cemeteries. We used to go there every couple of weeks to take care of the graves, water the flowers and all that bit. It was exactly what a rural cemetery was supposed to be, a place to congregate, the family to get together. Now, we sort of got busy making our lives, raising children and so on, and we came from Albany down to Bethlehem, and Bethlehem had a unique experience for us in the sense that it was the headquarters, the North American headquarters for the Moravian Church. It is it's southern Austria and Germany, Protestant church that migrated to the United States in 1844 in the Lehigh Valley and built one heck of a community up there. The architecture is unreal and is still preserved. But they also had a very strong custom of how they buried their people. And what it was is basically it would be buried in a crypt underneath the ground, but a slab would be put over them with everything marked on them. And some of those slabs have to be very ornate. I don't have pictures with me, I'm just mentioning it. That sort of caught my eye. Considering that, and by the way, when we got married, 51 years ago, we went to the Poconos for our honeymoon. And as we're driving to the resort, we pass a cemetery, and I look at the cemetery and I said, oh, I bet they had people from the Revolutionary War in there. And don't you know it, 3 days into our honeymoon, I'm back at the cemetery going screwing through. And my wife is, you know, this is the way you spend your honeymoon, okay? But up in Bethlehem, we sort of laid low on that. It wasn't until I got here in Memphis and the history of this area and what's here that we really started getting into cemeteries. And what I started doing, at the same time, just by coincidence, this is almost like a flow process and it evolved. A woman by the name of Betty Fink was doing a genealogical survey on McNary, the name McNary, because my father had married her aunt, et cetera, et cetera. One thing led to another, and it got me interested in where did I come from and so on. And I also started looking into our family on my mother's side, which was from Poland and Russia. Poland, by the way, the Pale. And when she immigrated to the United States in 1914, just before World War I breaking out, she raised 7 children here, and they all went up to St. Agnes, the Catholic cemetery in Albany, okay? But it was a Polish type thing, okay? I started asking questions here because when I signed on to the, how long we've been with the Shelby County Historical, I heard things that sort of made me wonder, and I started looking into the internet, and I've been told I should have asked for the internet before I got here, but it would be better to show you on the screen. I started searching in the internet looking for cemeteries in Shelby County. And frankly, I only found about 110 of them. There's about 284. And part of the work has been over the last 4 years is identifying them and so on. Tusa, I left it in the car, in the back seat.
Got it. Yes.
She's got the key. And what it was basically we started in, I'm looking for these cemeteries and where are they? What's the history of, that led to the history of Shelby County. You didn't look at cemeteries without getting deeper and deeper into the history. And that goes all the way back to the 1820s, down on the river, and then the movement into Shelby County toward the east. But then the settlers coming in from the east into eastern Shelby County, all the way up to Arlington as a starting point, if nothing else. Fisherville, go on up to Rosemark, and all the way up in there, and then over to Cuba, and from there. This whole county area, rural area, has got cemeteries in it. Now, I've mentioned garden cemeteries, but basically, what I'm finding out was there are a lot of family cemeteries. Plots here and there, in little coves of woods, on the edge of a farm. In fact, it is even rumored that everybody recalls a Mr. Bolton from Bolton High School and Bolton College, and the little shoot bang 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 thing with Mr. Bolton, not to be disrespectful. There is a discussion going on among some serious historians that Mr. Bolton is still up at Bolton High School. Mr. Bolton. The rest of the family is down in Elmwood. Okay, although Elmwood says that he's down there. I mean, we go back and forth on this one. Oh, thank you. And so the objective came, after looking up, searching out where all these cemeteries were. I don't know if it's gonna hold up. Just try. There's Shelby County. Excuse me, everybody see this? This is literally Shelby County by Rick Stieg down at the county mapping area. You'll notice that, of course, all the cemeteries in the city. But look what's out here. Every one of those marks there is a cemetery. A little family plot and so on. Now let's go back, 1840, 1850, 1860. Plantations are being built up here. There's a lot of foresting going on up here. There's a lot of other growth going in, your cotton and so on. And there's a good number of people out here, but it's rural and they're far apart. Where are they gonna bury their people? You're gonna bury them close by so they can go to them and visit them. They aren't gonna take them all the way down into the city. Anybody that passes away out here. That is what led to our family cemeteries around the county. Trying to find them now is horrible. And I'll tell you why in a little bit later. You had your hand up, sir.
Yes, sir. What's the minimum number of plots or people buried in a spot to qualify it as a cemetery?
According to the laws of the state of Tennessee, 1. 1. You cannot move that grave without permission from the relatives of that person. Now that leads to all other things. You start researching that and you find out there are no more relatives. Now, I don't know what they found out at Hunter's Walk, but that developer did its service to this community. He preserved it and kept it sacred. People are there. You can't look, thank you, I'm sorry. It is.
You need it open again?
No,
Okay.
you can't, I need a little bit of, I'll tell you about this. Every grave is a history, is a story. Maybe a simple story of a common man who probably ran a wagon down the street. But every grave is a story. That's where we get our history from. Consequently, there's something important about it. And yet, we have a tendency to gloss over it and run around with it. What I've learned since I've started this project is you gain a great deal of respect for what people have done to preserve their own heritage. And what has fallen through the cracks and how it's continually falling through the cracks. But now I get off to we'll knock it out of soapbox. I'm gonna pass these out for you. Because what we did in the process, what we did in the process, take one graph if you would please. You might have to share one. What we did in the process was go look for the cemeteries that were already known. Get their addresses. If you went to, if we had the internet, if you went to the internet, you can go to Tom Leatherwood's archives, and from that point on, you could get the coordinates of almost every single cemetery. Why? Because it's the coordinates of the tax map. NADs. Now, it's an old system, antiquated system, but it worked. So we spent a lot of time getting the coordinates of all these cemeteries, putting them on the spreadsheet that you see an example of. And that's what literally generated, this is an older one, that's what generated this map of where they're at. By using the tax roll coordinates. To work with that system, and they are the first 3 items on this sheet, if I may, up here. Up here. All right. To work with that, you literally had to find out the street address as close as you could, and this got to be a problem in rural areas. You had to find as closest landmark that you could get your hands on or see, and whether it be a church, a house, or whatever, even if the cemetery was 500 feet off from it, okay? So everything you did was approximate in certain areas. Other places, you had the exact address. And once you got that, you put that into the spreadsheet, and we started working this down, and a few things came to mind. Number 1, names. Ask 50 people the name of a common cemetery, such as the one you have right out here, Allendale. I can show you 3 different names for that same cemetery. Which one are you going to call it?
Pisgah.
Huh? Pisgah, thank you. Right? 3 different names for the same cemetery, which is a beautiful cemetery. Second of all, we have this practice that was going on, and it happened, it evolved. This is where you learn your history. Where did they bury the Afro-Americans? What was the common method? What was the culture at the time? And at the time we were dealing with Jim Crow, and especially in the Reconstruction area, because it was only after the Civil War, with the emancipation of the Afro-American community, that they started picking up our so-called Christian methods of burial. Monuments, churchyards, rows, east to west, the whole topography. It was only then that they started going into that. And that was not in the general cemeteries, that was in their own cemeteries.
And what year did you say that was?
In the 1870s, starting from there, they started picking it up. Prior to that in this country, you had the Great Awakening, about 1840. And that was a point where everybody started following the standard practice of the Christian churches. There was two Great Awakenings. One in about 1790, that was the first run. The Methodist riders and so on and so forth in the rural areas and the frontiers, going on into the 1830s and 40s. This was a great evangelical renewal of the whole countryside. This got the churches heavily involved in taking care of their deceased, all right? But at the same time, they realized that they couldn't handle the population. Therefore, your public cemetery started. I don't want to get too far off track and bore you, but that's where your Elmwood starts, 1852. That's where your Albany Royal started, 1844, back in that era. And they were pretty good ventures at the time. I'm sorry? Did you find something? Oh.
Sorry.
No.
She's pointing out where she lives.
Right here on the corner.
We should have done the corner.
Cemetery.
All right.
I'm gonna walk over there.
Okay, great.
I used to live right down here.
Oh, okay. This, by the way, came from Leatherwood.
Yes, right.
And I just printed it down and just because it was, but you'll notice there's 3 cemeteries there.
Right. I
Then
live
you-
right by it, yes.
But you got a little problem. One's Afro, one's Caucasian, and then you got the full view Baptist church up in the corner. And they've got a cemetery in the back of that.
That's right.
So there's 3 right in that one little area. Okay?
Pisgah.
Yeah.
Pisgah.
That's what full view is now? They call it?
No.
No,
Bartlett,
it's still,
Ellendale
full
was-
view still calls theirs full view. The one by the old church is still there. I didn't know there was one behind the new church.
I didn't either.
Take a look at it.
I haven't been out there lately, so
Bartlett,
that's,
Ellendale is.
Bartlett Ellendale is what they call it now.
Biscuits,
Okay.
And it used to
Unfortunately,
be
it's not
more-
showing up that
There
well
was
here.
one chapel, and it's
But if you-
called Pisgah.
If you blow this up, you will see tombstones back here.
Yeah.
Okay? If you blow it up, this is a dark.
It started in 1830s.
They're 1830s. So your early settlers. I recently had a case, not a case, sounds pompous. I recently it was called up and somebody talked to me about a cemetery up in Cordova and I spent a darn near a day trying to find that thing. It was on somebody's side lawn,
Yeah.
up on a hill. And all the stones had been broken down, pretty much. And graves that were sunken in and so on. And they wanted to clean it up. It's those little, and when you cleaned up the stones and got them, they took the transcriptions off them and so on, they were some of the original settlers up in the Cordova area. I mean, literally, the originals,
Oh, yeah.
the families. So you're looking at something that's real, and they're still there. Next thing was repairing the stone, which we wound up trying to do, and we did. And then cleaning it up and putting some soil in and so on and trying to level it off. But they took care of it, and it's being taken care of now. That is an exceptional case, right here in Bartlett. And I'm not reflection on anybody here, all right? Don't get to the mayor here and the alderman and all that there. But you have the Major Taylor Cemetery, right across the way from the City Hall Complex, off Stage Road. That big block of overgrown area. I mean, it's big. I walked in there, I couldn't find a tombstone, but they're in there, okay? And it was also overgrown with green and evergreen and everything else, and I couldn't find it. The best time to go looking for cemeteries, by the way, is around December, January, and so on, okay? Then you can see what's in the ground,
and no
otherwise.
snakes, maybe.
Snakes! No, boy, Lord forbid. Okay, you always wear heavy shoes. That's all I say, is always wear heavy shoes and boots. And keep your legs covered. But seriously, that's the best time to go looking. But that one right there, then you got Ellendale down the road. So there's a disparity about what's being taken care of and what's being preserved.
Ellendale's still being used.
And being used. And I don't think anybody's being buried at Major, Taylor, thank you, Major Taylor Cemetery.
Not since the 50s.
But it should be preserved. This is where a good number of people were put in that worked this land and built this city, that worked around this city. The sharecroppers, and prior to that, probably quote unquote slaves. And I run into a lot of that, especially out in the, I took the map now, in the rural areas. I was,
Do you try to photograph each headstone?
no, that's transcription. And I haven't gotten into transcription.
What do you mean, transcription?
Going
Recording.
Started
Recording
at
what's
the-
there and what do you find.
We started at a particular point in the cemetery and worked across, back
Yep,
and forth.
back and
Get them
forth.
all.
And you get a plot map of the whole thing. And then, not only that, you're gonna find areas where all of a sudden the ground is sunk. Is it sunken because there's water underneath it, or is that a grave?
Right.
And a George, can't remember his name. Come on, John. McCoskey, from the University of Alabama, had a seminar. And if you get a chance to go one, it was over in Germantown, and Germantown Genealogical sponsored it. And it literally showed, he came in and showed us how to plot out the cemetery once you find one. You find the bearings on it, where the buried graves are, and so on and so forth. And you're not gonna be perfect, but you're gonna get a good idea of how it is. All right, and that's why you go into this whole thing about the history, how did it evolve, and so on, so you know. Because a lot of cemeteries, people were buried randomly. East, west, north, south, any place they can find a slot, there's a beautiful tree over there, that's where he's gonna be. All right? We've gotten very systemic. Rows, grids, and plots, and so on and so forth. Well, he gives a seminar on that, and I think he'll be here next spring again. He'll come in, so I would suggest if you see something on it, please participate. It was worth the day and a half that he was here. Other than that, where are we going from now?
Who sponsored that?
The genealogical, Germantown Genealogical Society over on Poplar Pike,
Yeah.
next to the parks. And they sponsored it, literally, and it was free. I'm trying to remember that I've gone to so many of these, and you give your $15 fees, and I don't remember this one, having to pay for this one. I just showed up and had a fantastic education on how to find a grave. And he even turned around, what's those things that you use to find water?
Divining rods.
He even showed how you could find a grave with a divining rod, although being a McNary, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit skeptical.
They found one right across the street here.
A
There
grave
was a family
or what?
cemetery,
Did
and
it?
we watched. They found it with a divining rod.
Really?
Yeah,
Where?
right over here, right in the Doherty property. You know the Doherty property. Before some new houses were built, about 5, Kevin.
They
several
moved the
years
grave, of
ago.
course.
Yes.
But they only moved one, and there were others, because my sons who grew up playing around here, there were more markers over there than one, but they only moved one. And we sat on my son's front porch, who lived right down there, and watched them find it with a divining rod.
I'm still not a believer.
Well, we watched it happen.
I can walk up and down it.
I thought that was to find water.
That's what I thought
It
too,
is,
but then
but there
they
is
use
some-
it to find.
There's some change in the ground or
Yes,
something, I don't know all
and
the
he showed us,
scientific
the
stuff.
doctor showed us how if you have a long poke, a rod with a point on it, that if you just get the first one in and find a firm ground, go over 3 inches and start poking down across 3 foot, you will find where the grave actually goes down and then goes back up, and do it the other way, 6 foot. And that way you can literally identify that in this cemetery, there's a grave right there, and so on. But you may not know, you don't know who it is, because registrar records, there's no headstones, It's a plot, there's a grave there, that's all you know. So we have this problem, not only we lose graves, we lose sight of who's there, and people who literally are trying to do genealogy and so on, where's the grave?
Well, that cemetery wouldn't even have a name, would it?
What, the one I saw? Oh, wait, which one? I'm
Where you
sorry.
can't find a headstone or anything.
Oh, it doesn't have a name. Oh, well, there's no headstone at this Bethany Cemetery out there, but there's a grave.
So what do you call it?
You don't. It's Bethany Cemetery, that's all I know. It's an unmarked grave. That's all you got. That's all you got. Unless you can find something on the registrar's office or the plots to go through and see what's out there, and maybe this is, Harry is over here and Martha is over here. And there's nothing there. You run into that continually. This can be a very frustrating situation, all right? And if that's what you're trying to get to. See if I can wrap this up real quick. There was a couple of situations. One of the things that I found in this is not only looking for graves or grave sites and burial sites, is what it did do is help me understand, or try to understand. I don't have a full understanding. I am not an expert in this, but of the cultural history of this whole area. The cultural history, when this was a farming community, which you have just got done celebrating. What it was like back then. Where did they bury the people there? What were the practices and how was it done? All right? And this helped me to understand that and to get appreciation for what went on around us. So if you want to go get into this, you can get my telephone number, I think, is at the top of these sheets somewhere in there. If you know of a grave, or you know of a grave site, just send me an email. Just as best you can, get me an address, and I will follow up on it. I really will. I'm still looking for a lot of family graves. I found an old map of Shelby County. This is all made up fancy. I found an old map of Shelby County, and it could have come from the geological. At one time, back in the 40s and 50s, and even into the 60s, if I understand correctly, U.S. Geological Survey literally plotted out everything, every square foot of this country, and knew where a great number of cemeteries were that are never on any maps. All right, if you can get out, if you went back into their rolls of maps down at City Hall, you would find cemeteries. We found one on President's Island, a big one, of sharecroppers. And their stones, by the way, their stones were concrete. They had written in, poured concrete, written in who was there, and let it set, and that was the way they did their burial. That was their headstone. That got washed up in the last flood we had in what, 2008, 2009? The big flood that we had coming up. I mean, but while you're looking for that, you're standing right near where Nathan Bedford Forrest had his barracks for his convict labor that he was selling to the city and the state. They lived out there. That was his operation after the Civil War. So you learn more and more and more and more.
John, this backyard here of this house was a cemetery because Julia Sophia Coleman was buried there. And then they moved her later on to be next to her husband. But
It's the Baptist Children's Home out on Summer Avenue,
Yes,
the original one.
there's a couple of graves.
Settler, I guess.
There's a couple of graves out
He
there.
and his wife.
James Blackwell and his wife.
Yes. That over there. Have I confused you enough, or have I?
well, I do have a question. What do you actually do with this information? You give it to Leatherwood, or you have your own website, or what?
Leatherwood has taken the listings. These are spreadsheets. Those spreadsheets go, I think there's about 10 pages of them, full spreadsheet, okay? And yeah, a typical spreadsheet. I forward this to Richard Stieg, and what we've gotten into, and I didn't bring it with me, I've got a GPS indicator. They've gotten cheaper. It used to be $600, $700, $800. You can get one for $200. That'll give you the coordinates of any place you're standing in the United States, okay? Here's from the satellite. What you really need, I ask you to just tell me the address. What I go out and do is make sure I get the coordinates of where that cemetery is on the GPS. That's what's listed in here. And notice there are blanks here, okay? But that's what's listed here. He turns around and puts them into a very sophisticated mapping program that includes this house on that mapping process, all the cemeteries around here that we know of. And if I give him the coordinates of the ones that I found in rural, over near Arlington, he can put them on there too. So actually the best way to identify a cemetery is by GPS. Then you can literally write directions to it. You can put it on a map. People can see how to get to it and where it is. And if you can get the headstones or some information from the headstones of that cemetery, and remember what I said about names. Some of these cemeteries are stuck in the woods. What are you gonna call it? Okay, so you come up with a name for it, but then you can add confusion.
Yeah.
So we generally use a city or a town name, okay, or a family name if we know that it's on family property, that there's a cemetery there. That's the best way you can identify it. And give them the GPS. And that's what these sheets are doing. That's what he's using.
I told you one time about Chambers Chapel
Yes,
Cemetery. It's the most beautiful little cemetery I've ever seen. It's out near Lakeland, I guess. It's gorgeous. If you hadn't been out there,
By the church.
that's where, yeah,
right next to the church.
that's where a
Right
lot of
there.
my family's buried.
Your family is buried, and didn't they have Halloween events out there at one time?
I don't know.
Not to be funny, I mean, I've heard so many various stories from various churches and groups and so on.
I don't think so,
Okay.
but it could be. I don't know.
But, no, there was one church I went to, doctor, that I got told by the person I was with, when they were a child, they used to have Halloween events out there and have goblins come up behind the graves and so on, and scare the
They do that
kids.
at Elmwood.
Yeah.
Pardon?
They do that at Elmwood.
They do that, but they were also doing it out in the rural areas up in there. There was something else I was gonna mention, you just made me think of something about it.
Well, you mentioned some of them are found in forests,
Oh, okay.
and we've, in the development around here in Bartlett, it's not no big deal. Every now and then, somebody will have 80 acres of forest,
Yeah,
and developer buys it, nobody knows what's in there. But they find a cemetery, a family cemetery in that woods. It hasn't been tended for years. That you can find, usually there's a tombstone and you get an idea who it is.
and that's all, I think all you need. Historic cemeteries in the state of Tennessee, there is a very well-written law if you
Oh,
find
yeah.
that piece
Oh,
of
yeah.
property
Oh, yeah.
and so on. I was up in Fisherville. The cemetery is in a small cove of trees, approximately 50 yards from the end of the road into the field. Covey of trees, cemetery right in the middle of it. Ran into a problem with the landholder, wouldn't allow us to get in to go look at that cemetery. The law says, if you're related to somebody in that cemetery, he or she has to let you into it. This got to be a haggle point, okay? The other haggle point is when the developer turns around and literally just covers everything completely and moves all the headstones. They did that over at Colonial Park, shopping, or golf course over here. They found the headstones in the ditches. We found the headstone, we didn't find the headstones when we were looking for another one up in the Bartlett Grange in Sunderland. I went to McVeigh Cemetery, which is one of those little things McNary got out of jail and did. And because I walked by there one day and I see all these headstones in a big pile from here to that wall, about that high.
Oh my gosh.
Bricks, pieces, and so on. The cemetery is up further on up the hill. How are you going to get them all back in there and where are the graves? We finally determined approximately where the graves were, where the patterns were, but we could not put those headstones back in. This was at a Methodist church. Methodist church took over responsibility for the cemetery, but it had been so badly vandalized they couldn't do anything with it outside, keeping it clean, keeping it weed free. That's about it. So desecration and vandalism and destruction of the cemeteries is, we're destroying our own heritage.
There's a white and separately,
Yeah.
black cemetery, on Highway 64. Seth's Lighting.
Tollgate Cemetery.
Tollgate.
Tollgate. Been
Yeah,
there,
the
done
whites are,
that.
the whites are up on the hill,
Yeah.
the Afro-Americans are down at the lower part of it, and so
Right.
on. There's a Confederate grave. Where things got real interesting is, and I'll stop at this point unless you have some more questions. I was asked to find 15 American Revolutionary War veterans that came to Shelby County. And okay, scratching my head. The DIR insisted that there were 15 of them. In fact, they're on a plaque down at City Hall. Nobody knows where the heck they're buried except for one.
Is that at Tollgate?
No,
Oh, okay.
no,
Where is it?
Morning something or other.
Morning Sun.
Morning Sun.
Been there, done that one too.
Just one Elmwood.
Morning Sun. That's the only one I could find. Okay? And then you had to stop and think about it. And this is where the history comes in. The war is over with. If they're in a Revolutionary War, they're in their teens, all right, they become a soldier. So that means that they were born around maybe about 1760. All right, if they're gonna be 1776, so on, we'll start from there, in that range. Carrying that forward a little bit. They turn around, get done with the war, they get their grants from the United States, the warrants for land, as was their payment.
Right.
They pass the warrants or sell them or whatever to their sons. Sons come out here, coming from North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and so on, over to this area. All right, those warrants, and they come with their family, and they settle here. Now, where are they gonna settle? I put the map away, but you remember the arc around Shelby County? They don't go to Memphis, they're out there, that's where the land is. They set up their households. And Susan Jones, her husband, and that whole family, they can give you a complete history of all the early settlers up in that area of,
Raleigh,
what's the other, on the other side?
Rosemary.
No, down below Rosemark.
Is there-
Where's the Bolton? What's next to Bolton?
Bolton.
Lucy or?
No, not Brunswick.
Not Brunswick.
Macedonia?
Huh?
Macedonia, you going
No.
up north or you coming back?
No,
this way?
I'm going east. Lakeland,
Oh, Lakeland.
Lakeland. I mean, et cetera, okay? We could, there's so many cemeteries that are showing up on the old maps that I have yet to find, so I've got some work to do in the long run. But the big thing I would like to see done is a conscious awareness on the part of all the historical societies to pay attention to cemeteries and what has to be done. All it takes at times is a weed whacker just to get a good handle on what's there, where the graves are, where the stones are. Weed whacker will clean up a lot of it, and you can start doing something from there. It doesn't take a lot of money, it doesn't take a lot of, it takes some time and it takes some people. Go up to Raleigh, clean that up. And they've been struggling for at least 10 years trying to get a crew in there to clean it up. But you're getting this enthusiasm to do that. There's another one out in Raleigh. We found one behind a woman's house that it was covered over with weed and flowers and so on. And all it really took to clean it up, and it's about 3/4 of an acre. We clean it up with a weed whacker. You have it done in 2 hours.
Is Tollgate being taken care of?
Pardon?
Is anybody taking care of Tollgate?
Not that I know of.
No.
The upper part,
Historical Society went out.
We went out there 2 different
Oh, yeah,
times and
yeah.
ended up, yeah.
And Oak Grove?
I haven't been there recently, but the upper part appeared to have been taken part. The lower part seems to be going down.
That's not on here. I don't see it on here.
Tollgate?
No, you haven't got the whole list there.
Oh,
do you?
I do.
Oh, if that's the case, then may I flip through? It might have a different name. Remember what I
Okay.
said?
Right.
It was just, what's another name for Tollgate?
Don't know one.
That's the only one that's ever been called.
Oak Grove Church did the blacks in there. So it might be under Oak Grove.
It could be.
I just saw there is an Oak Grove there. I was just going.
They also have a cemetery behind the church.
Yeah, Oak
Yeah,
Grove?
that's
There's a small one back there.
too far apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they were taking care of this.
They were taking care of, they were, yeah,
For a
some of their parishioners
Okay,
were
that's
buried
right,
at Tollgate.
that's right.
I'm looking. Oak Springs,
Oak
no.
Grove,
Oakville,
Oak Grove,
I,
Missionary
I
Band.
would, I can look it up, but it's not on this list right now, and you're right, I don't see, I remember told it. I was out there, I walked it, I mean, the Confederates, the Sons of the Confederacy went out at one point, were taking care of their graves for their veterans, okay, for their, and they got one right there in the middle of that. So I've been there, I've seen it, but I'm not sure why it's not on there. Right now, I cannot answer. The work is still in process, and I have to apologize for any errors. They're completely my responsibility. I accept that responsibility, just like Hillary and Trump.
You need a round of applause.
I'm so-
Is it? Okay, thank you. I didn't,
It's the black one. You probably need to add Tollgate. It says Oak Grove,
Okay.
MD Tollgate, and it's where it's supposed to be, 9250
there
Highway.
you go.
Oh, girl,
Thank
it's
you.
right there for us.
Names seriously have been a problem.
That's
And then it shows there's
Because-
one at the hotel, at the church site also.
Yeah, there's-
And names have been a problem.
about 3 years.
Thank
In a
goodness
sense,
for-
I spent a lot of time in frustration, and my wife will probably tell you a few choice words I've said to the
You
computer.
certainly deserve congratulations for the work that
Yes.
you've done.
Yes, my
I
goodness.
mean, there's nobody else doing it.
Well, I don't know how important it is, but
It
I
is
think it's saving the cemeteries, especially the one that got me was McVeigh to see that Isle of Flag
Yeah.
Yes.
signs. That hit me hard.
But you're doing this just on your own, volunteer.
Yes, just about, I'm retired, sir.
Nobody pays.
I'm retired, quote unquote. Nobody pays me now. I'm with the Shelby County Historical Commission.
Okay.
That's great.
Mr. Quinn, the doctor, okay? And by the way, I knew what I wanted, but you don't mind me just keep on going, just for a couple
Sure.
of, 2 more minutes of
Go
your
ahead.
time.
You're good.
All right, the buzzer.
The buzzer will ring.
All right, and I dropped to the floor. Right now, there's a Rural Heritage Trust endeavor going on.
We're part of it.
We're part of it. You're part of it,
The Historic Society is part of it.
okay?
Susan Jones has been here.
Great. That's going on. Part of the mapping, you could take this is a 2-year-old map. Actually, it's a little longer, 3. Rick has literally taken all the historical locations, including this house, and put it on the map. Next thing is those little barcodes. You've heard about that, right? Those little barcodes that you take your phone and you go up to and you run it through, as if you were in a grocery store and you wanted to find out the prices or something
Apple
like that.
Pay.
Whatever, I'm not sure what the name is. That's coming down, is what they're tentatively trying to get done. They're still talking about it. But there would be one on a little barcode out there, and you come through with your cell phone, run it through there, and it'll give you a description of the house and everything about it. That's one of the reasons we wanted the maps, primarily to see where we would have to put this, and how far it'd have to go. The range in the county. All the way up to Rosemark, down to the Mississippi border. Okay? And so anybody driving or walking or riding or whatever can get the information about what the local historical sites are. Arlington's got a lot of them. You've got a lot of them right here. I mean, seriously, I'm not degrading what you've got here. You've got some lights. So is Germantown. Okay? But who knows about it? So you don't have people standing around here giving guided tours. It's not like downtown Memphis. All right? This is a way to get the information out and take care of, help develop the tourism industry. That we have information going to people, and they can see things and get connections between here and there. And the cemeteries happen to be the first step. Susan's work is second. And eventually we will have this place pretty well documented for the general public to come through, either walking, riding, driving, or whatever. Okay? Your Trail of Tears should really be pushed pretty heavily. I'm not sure what's out there right now outside of your markers. Okay? That's it. But that's what I wanted to mention. That's where this is leading to.
We're working on it.
We're working on it, okay? And I thank you for putting up with that.
Thank you. Having cleaned up an old cemetery from many, many years, I can relate it, how much fun it is. If you haven't been to a cemetery lately, visit one close to you. Seriously, you'd be surprised what you would find in the cemetery.